This is Tim.
And Mulele.
And this is Critiquing Comics. Welcome to Critiquing Comics. This is Tim with Mulele in Tokyo. It's been a while. How's it going?
Okay, I guess.
You're still kind of in the same situation as before, just making comics all the time. And, well, I guess besides the money that's coming in from the whole legal situation we talked about before, you're also teaching a little bit again, I know.
Yeah. I work at a university 1 day a week, but that's pretty much it. I would like to say I'm making money by comics, but the truth is not really. And yeah, I mean it's all kind of pending stuff, really. And yeah, I guess that's about it.
Okay. And me, I've been doing proofreading on top of everything else, and so sometimes there's not enough time to do all the podcast stuff. So,
oh yeah,
Machi Guy Podcast is a rerun most of the time, and once in a while there's no deconstructing comics or critiquing comics at all. So sorry about that. I'm hoping that come spring, my day job situation, I guess if you can call it that, will maybe be a little bit more kind of concentrated or efficient so that maybe I have more podcast time again. I hope. It's still kind of up in the air at the moment, but
I see.
Okay, so we got a couple comics to talk about again. Sorry to the people who sent them. They've been sitting in the queue for a few months between being busy and then doing our two shows on comics from the Tokyo Comic Shows. These have kind of been on the back burner. So the first one is called Gorky and Izzy's Trip to Mexico. Now, I didn't realize until the end that it's issue 1 of at least 2, because got to the end. Oh, it's continued. Okay. Story by F.E. Rahman and art by Jon, maybe Schwochert, I'm hoping. And so Gorky and Izzy, of the title, do make a trip to Mexico, and apparently they're involved in drug smuggling or some kind of organized crime, but that's not really what the story is focused on. Gorky has just been dumped by his girlfriend and he's really hurting, and so the story is kind of a comedy about how Izzy's trying to deal with the mourning that Gorky is going through, and at the end they're in a strip club, someone's after them, and the boss is unable to reach them to warn them, so that's the cliffhanger. Now, the thing that I think we have to talk about first is the format of this, because I was kind of wondering, I mean, we got a PDF, but I'm not sure how the intended paying audience is going to be looking at this. So I have to explain what we got. So it works in a PDF if you've got Acrobat on the single continuous mode where it doesn't scroll. It's just you hit an arrow key and bam, you're on the next page, which was how I read it. And if you do that, it's kind of, I don't know, I have mixed feelings about it. It's kind of a nice effect. It's like you get a page, but it's only got one panel on it, and then you hit the arrow key and then a second panel appears. And hit the arrow key again and the third panel appears, but it's still that same page. It's not exactly animation, but it gives it a little bit of an animated feel. And the panels may, appear in an order that they couldn't, workably do in a printed comic. Because like the scene where they go to the bar and first the panel along the top appears and then the one along the bottom, and those are both sort of mood setting panels, and then the panel in the middle shows the main characters in the bar.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think it's an interesting idea. It just, to read, basically, instead of an 111 page PDF, you've got a 111 panel PDF, and you have to hit the arrow key 111 times to read the comic. Or I guess 110, it would work out. But that's a little bit of a pain. But yeah, it's kind of an interesting effect. How did you feel about it?
I also have mixed feelings. It's very cinematic, I did find that kind of interesting. I'm not sure if I agree with some of the panel movement choices that they made, because sometimes they would start a page with panel 1 and then go to panel 3 and then put panel 2 after that. So they kind of fades in different sequences, which made some of the reading confusing sometimes.
Yeah, and sometimes a panel appears on top of another panel, like, or in place of another panel that was already there.
Yeah, and so I'm not quite expecting that. It actually reminds me quite a lot of Ang Lee's Hulk, and some of the tricks that he did in that film with moving panels and whatnot. But you're looking at a static frame the entire time with the movie. It's much more I'd say grounded in the darkness, because you've got kind of a pinhole focus on the screen, and then if something switches, it's much easier to register. Here, not so much. There are a couple of panels where I had to kind of go back and forth because I registered a change, but I didn't know what changed. And so this is kind of interesting and it kind of works, but I don't know if it's really necessary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not really necessary. You could just do, a regular printed comic, or have the panels appear like that, but moving straight from left to right or top to bottom, maybe a little less confusing.
Yeah, a little less confusing. I can understand the how the idea may have kind of been interesting to them and they ran with it, and maybe it surprised them in some ways too as they're making it. I'm not sure, but in general, I feel that this can only be done in PDF form, and the comic itself, it's probably as a paper comic or printed comic, it wouldn't be this gimmick. But gimmick aside, I had a couple of issues with the art. They've got this spatter over every panel and over everything, really, because it goes over the word balloons as well. And sometimes it adds to the picture and sometimes it doesn't. And it begins to look a little bit messy, but there doesn't seem to be any symbology in it. It seems to be a stylistic effect, but I can't tell what it's supposed to represent. If it's anything to do with where they are, or the state of the world in this, I'm not sure. I can understand if certain things are dirty, but in this, it just seems like an overlay, which kind of throws me a little bit. But other than that, it is fairly solid in its storytelling. It's the way it arranges on the page works, aside from the animation and stuff, or the effects that we talked about. I would say, however, for that one character, Gorky. Actually, for this entire comic, we kind of know that they're in some weird business. two henchmen who've been sent to Mexico to do a thing. They did the thing, but something else is happening, and they're not quite aware yet what's coming for them. But we never see Gorky in his correct mental state.
Mm-hmm.
We meet him a broken man, or a man who's breaking and trying to pull it together. And we meet Izzy, who, even though he's the friend of Gorky, really does not want to deal with this. And so they're both kind of set in this weird situation that alters their normal modus. If you think of, the most obvious comparison would be Pulp Fiction.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at Jules and Vincent at the beginning of that film, when they're talking about Royale with cheese and foot massages, we're kind of in those moments getting a sense of who they are as people. And they're in their normal state. They're on their way to a job. And then something happens in the job which alters that. And for the rest of their time on screen, they're dealing with this altered perception of reality. Essentially, Jules saying God came down and stopped the bullets, and that's why they're alive. That's why I'm leaving the business. And it sets the characters off on a different trajectory. So we have the understanding of who these characters are first, and then we see the change. Here, it's after the change. And so I kind of felt a little bit like that was missing. I wanted to see the value of Gorky before he's broken. Whereas here, he seems like a waste of time. I don't know why the boss is so sympathetic with him. I don't know why Izzy is his best friend. I mean, because even in Pulp Fiction, Jules and Vincent were not best friends. And there were some points of tension there where Jules had to call the boss and say, hey, take care of your man because he's fucking up, when they disagreed about whatever. But that is kind of where it felt it was missing a little bit. But I can see where in the second issue, if they address some of that, it could be okay. It could be that we start with a broken man and we end up with a fixed man.
Mm-hmm.
And that would be fine as a story arc. It's just that for me, his brokenness is a little bit annoying. Because I mean, it is a breakup. Watching someone go through a breakup is the worst kind of shit. Got to be with him. It's like, oh man, I don't got time for your nonsense. And I really understand Izzy's feeling, but if I'm supposed to be sympathetic to these characters, it's kind of difficult. I just want Gorky to deal with this shit and move on, or be gone from the story.
Yeah, I mean, I found it kind of enjoyable to read, but I agree that it would have had more power to it if we had seen them before the breakup.
Yeah.
And of course, I can't help mentioning the need for proofreading of the words in the word balloons. There were some pretty simple errors, like when Gorky is in the hotel room and just kind of running around naked, and Izzy tells him to put on his cloths.
Okay. I didn't see that. Yeah.
Or on page 19, finish your drink. It's Y-O-U-R-E. Sort of the U-R contraction, but there's no apostrophe.
Yeah.
So, yeah, just, check your spelling.
Actually, on that point, there's one other thing about the word balloons. When you are dealing with the letter I, there's the capital I and there's the small I. The capital I is used for
the letter I, for the personal pronoun, I should say.
Yeah, for the personal pronoun, or at the beginning of a sentence, but not in the middle of a word.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have to use the small I, which doesn't have the horizontal bars on it.
Yeah.
And it's just something to watch out for as you go through your comics. Don't do it. And if your font doesn't have an option for that, use a different font because that's fucked up. And it looks kind of weird. That was the only thing that I really felt was kind of off about it. I didn't notice the misspelling so much, but because my spelling.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah, on this page where he's saying, "I keep asking myself," and the "I" is just one vertical line, so it could make it a little hard to read.
Yeah. But I mean, other than that, it is an interesting comic. I don't want to. I don't know. Seem like it. I've got problems with it, or it's somehow a faulty comic. It's just there are a couple of things here and there. It's like, wait a minute, this is a little weird. This is a little. But I mean, overall, I did kind of enjoy the comic. I don't know. I don't want to make it sound like, I'll deal with it because it's here. No, that's not it. I can see the potential of it, and I'm curious to see part 2. But just those couple of things, I'm kind of hoping that they deal with, because it seems that they're kind of close.
Yeah, I mean, I found it enjoyable enough and interesting enough that I'd like to see the next part also.
Oh yeah.
When you watched Batman as a kid, you enjoyed the colorful heroes and villains, the text sound effects on the screen, the thrill of watching a heroic crime fighter escaping from death traps and taking down bad guys. But the show was devised to interest adults too. What did you miss as a kid? Sexual innuendo.
The penguin's too small for me.
Closeted gay characters.
I like that cape, Batman.
Freudian death traps.
Has the giant clam really swallowed Robin?
Police incompetence.
Bruce Wayne is a millionaire playboy. Hardly a secret identity for Batman.
Whether you're a kid or an adult, there's something to like about our favorite Caped Crusader. Tim and Paul dig for the deeper meanings under the Batmania every other Thursday. What's the podcast's name?
To the Batpoles. To the Batpoles. To the Batpoles.
Next up, These Savage Shores. Now, this is written by, and actually I should say it's issue number 2, when we never saw issue 1, but written by Ram V, who actually Coom interviewed in Deconstructing Comics 569 about a year and a half ago. Illustrated by Sumit Kumar. And yeah, I was sort of missing a issue 1 recap. I looked in like the front cover or inside front cover or something, but there was no recap. But anyway, this story is set in India in 1766. So, of course, British colonialism is in full swing. And we've got a guy named Zachariah Stern, who I actually didn't realize until I read the back cover blurb that he's a vampire hunter. I guess looking at it a second time, then I realized there is a sort of flashback panel there of a vampire sucking blood out of a girl. Like, oh, okay. But the word vampire wasn't actually used. So, and he's been after a vampire with a French name that I'm probably going to mispronounce, but Alain Pierrefonds, who has supposedly died. I'm wondering if that's what happened in issue 1. It's mentioned a number of times in here, which makes me feel like it's being pushed so hard that he can't actually be dead. For sure he's going to come back in issue 3 or 4. But there's kind of a lot going on in this 33-page PDF, because you got that, and then there's a young prince who has come to be the ruler of, I guess, India or some part of India, and Stern is kind of suspicious of that, and there's this masked man who's guarding the prince, and other things going on that takes a little too long to mention it all here, but I thought it was a little wordy, but it was interesting, and the art's gorgeous. I really liked the art, and it's very colorful. What did you think of it?
Yeah, I thought the art was gorgeous too. I really enjoyed looking at it. But yeah, starting in issue 2, man, I didn't know what to make of this. I was lost for half of it, and the story, I could tell that the writer was doing his job and setting things up, but knowing that it's issue 2 sets me at a severe disadvantage. I think if a writer is going to send in something for us to review, we got to at least have a recap, if not start from the beginning. Because had we reviewed issue 1, I might have gone on to issue 2 because the artwork is so good and the story is competent.
I should say that we were sent a sort of press release about it with a link that said read a review copy of issue 2 here. But I don't recall that we ever got one of these for issue 1.
Nope.
I mean, there might have been one that I overlooked and forgot to send you, but I don't think so.
Yeah.
No, actually, I just found one. Oops. That came in September.
Wait, so we've got issue 1, and
yeah, we do have issue 1, and I overlooked it.
Oh, for fuck's sake, man! Why don't we just wait on this review and let's read issue 1, because this shit was bugging me the whole time.
Just occurred to me to look for it. Okay, well, we'll come back to this, and let's move on to the listener mail. Or actually, I should say letter from someone whose comic we've talked about. And this is from Samuel Mooney, the creator of Alex. Remember about Alexander the Great?
Yep.
So he says, thanks for your review of Alex. I think you both hit the nail on the head when Mulele said, I bit off more than I could chew. And you said, I think the author lost enthusiasm when the contest didn't go the way he wanted. You meaning Tim, me. Basically, around the horse story, I realized I was doing more telling and not enough showing. I still believed in the story, but I realized I was going to have to put a lot more work into writing it properly than I had planned for. Nevertheless, I convinced myself that if I got anywhere in the contest, I would put in that work, but since I didn't, I didn't.
All right.
Speaking of losing enthusiasm, listening to your past few episodes, it seems like you yourself might have gone through a little of that. I'm glad to see you are back at it. Keep up the good work. Yeah, well, there's been that, and also just being too busy. But, trying to keep the thing moving here. But anyway, Samuel, thanks for writing in. And send us your next comic when you get that going again.
Oh, definitely.
Okay.
By the way, sorry, I almost forgot. It's kind of come to my attention that someone who I've known for a couple of years now has been listening to the podcast quite actively. And so I just wanted to give a shout out to Nick. Basically, if you're listening, thank you for being a patron of the arts. And I hope some of the comics that we review here you'll find worthy of picking up. Otherwise, make a donation to what is the PayPal account?
Donate at deconstructingcomics.com.
Yeah, if you are enjoying the podcast as much as I think you might be. Anyway, thank you, and write me a letter sometime.
Or join the Deconstructing Comics Patreon.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So we'll be back with both issues of Ram V's comic and another one that's still waiting in the queue. And if you'd like us to critique your comic, send us a PDF or a link at mail@deconstructingcomics.com, and we'll read at least 30 pages of it and critique it on the show. So, till next time, this is Tim.
And Mulele.
And thanks for listening to Critiquing Comics. Next week, Mulele and I will be back, armed with the first 3 issues of These Savage Shores. See you then. Yeah, I think I'll just leave all that in.